Nicolas Astrinidis was a Greek diaspora pianist and composer whose life trajectory reflects much of the history of 20th century Hellenism. Born in Romania in 1921 to an ethnically mixed family, a Greek father and a Romanian-Russian mother, he grew up in comfort during the interwar period in a country heavily influenced by French culture. A talented pianist and precocious composer, he pursued dual university and conservatory studies in Bucharest. In June 1940, the Soviet invasion of Romania changed his life forever. He and his parents were trapped in Soviet-controlled Bessarabia, while his two brothers remained in free Bucharest. The family's fortune was confiscated, and Father Astrinidis was arrested and sent to prison. Being a wealthy merchant, he was an enemy of the working class. Having Greek citizenship, the dismembered family was allowed to leave the occupied area. By that time, Greece itself was under German occupation, so they continued to the Middle East. With his parents finding shelter as refugees in Palestine, Astrinidis enlisted in the Royal Hellenic Air Force and was sent to the Libyan front for 2 years. A minor wound during battle led him back to Cairo, where he stayed until the end of the war. There he was able to resume his music studies and start his career as pianist and composer, earning first prize in the Cairo Eisteddfod Festival in 1944. Financially unable to travel to the United States, where the Juilliard School of Music had accepted him, he headed to Paris in 1947, where he completed his formal studies in the Schola Cantorum. Upon graduation, he immediately embarked on a career of international concert touring, mostly as accompanist of established artists from Janine Andrade to Christian Ferrat and Henrik Sering, but also as a soloist. A rescinded offer in 1957 to direct the State Conservatory of Thessaloniki led to an extension of his international career. Between 1959 and 1962, Astrinidis co-directed and taught at a newly founded conservatoire in Martinique. He also founded and conducted the chamber orchestra of the French Antilles. In 1965, after a decade of successful appearances as pianist and composer, Astrinidis was appointed director of the Philharmonic and Mixed Choir of the municipality of Thessaloniki. A second-rank position, truth be told, it allowed him to attend to his sick parents, who had settled as refugees first in Ceres and then in Thessaloniki, but also gave him sufficient time to compose large-scale symphonic works. After the oratorio St. Demetrios in 1962, arguably his most significant work, he also composed the oratorios Cyril and Methodius and Psalms for the recently revived Dimitria Festival. It was for the Dimitria of 1971 that Astrinidis was commissioned a symphonic work to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Greek War of Independence. He was ideal for the job. Born in 1921 and close to Iasi, where Alexandros Ypsilantis launched the revolution, he also had experienced slavery for close to a year under a repressive regime. Symphony 1821 was composed in a relatively short period of time, between January and July 1971. It was performed on October 27th of the same year at the Theatre of the Society for Macedonian Studies by the State Orchestra of Thessaloniki and the choir of the municipality of Thessaloniki under the composer's direction. Astonishingly, The work has never again been performed in its entirety since 1971. A scheduled performance by the Athens Philharmonia Orchestra to mark the bicentenary of the Greek Revolution in 2021 was unfortunately cancelled due to the COVID lockdown. In the remaining years of his life, Astrinidis managed to complete only one work of comparable length and complexity, the oratorio The Youth of Alexander the Great. Plans to compose an opera on Pavlos Melas and later on Olympias never reached fruition. Astrinidis died in Thessaloniki in December 2010 after several years of poor health. The peak in his late life was a festival of his works in the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts in 2004. His reputation has largely been sustained by a small circle of dedicated students and friends. A rarity for a Greek artist, Astrinidis has had a strong presence on the World Wide Web, with nearly all recordings of his works and many documents freely available to the public. The recent digitization of his archive in the Music Library of Greece, Lilian Voudouri, is a strong step towards the systematic dissemination of his music in Greece and abroad. As a composer, Astrinidis is a thoroughly romantic one. His music registers strong emotional responses to images, ideas, and events. His works are also dramatic in nature. They are driven by strong themes, which are subject to free development and constant transformation, according to the great tradition of 19th century symphonic music. His music language is that of late Romanticism, with influences from French Impressionism and injection of Greek folkloric elements, such as modal scales, open chords, and the use of folk or Byzantine melodies. In terms of form and orchestration, Astrinidis is closer to French rather than to German models. There is a clarity in his musical narratives, and his orchestration is considered exemplary for its transparency and skillful use of individual sections, especially the brass. Astrinidis' symphonic narratives are multi-sectional with frequent changes in meter and tempo. Each one has thematic coherence, typically starting with a fragmented presentation of a theme, which through sequences and orchestral crescendo reaches a full statement. As mentioned above, Symphony 1821 was composed during the first half of 1971 and was orchestrated in the summer of the same year. The autograph score and orchestral parts, the latter unfortunately with many mistakes due to time limitations, are now part of the Astrinidis archive in the Music Library of Greece. In 2018, I produced an electronic edition of the score with financial support by two of Astrinidis' relatives in the United States. My attempt to secure a publication subsidy from the 1821 Bicentenary Committee was unsuccessful. Despite time pressure, Astrinidis decided to compose a full symphony instead of a more conventional cantata. Undoubtedly, the Symphony of Levendia by Manolis Kalomiris was in his mind, especially the last choral movement on the Byzantine hymn Ti Hypermacho. Writing 50 years after Kalomiris, Astrinidis went a step further. All movements, except the scherzo, use the choir, and the traditional sonata form is replaced by a succession of symphonically presented folk songs. Except for the Hymn to Liberty by Greek national poet Dionysios Solomos and some excerpts from David's Psalms, all other texts are from Nikolaos Politis' collection of demotic songs from 1914. It is very likely that the composer's former librettist, the distinguished Thessalonian lawyer and literary critic Michalis Tsitsiklis, was involved in the selection of these texts. The main musical themes reproduced in the concert program are mostly from demotic songs and give the work an unmistakable air of authenticity. The most brilliant aspect of Symphony 1821 is that it maps out an overarching narrative of death and resurrection onto the form of symphony, using each of the traditional four movements to describe a phase in this process: the fall of Constantinople, slavery, Klefturia, and revolution. First movement, the fall of Constantinople. The movement expresses the collective lament of modern Hellenism for the loss of its physical and spiritual center, Constantinople. It is based on two demotic poems, Tis Agias Sophias and To Parsimo tis Polis. The audio excerpts are from a recording of the work's premiere in 1971. Second movement, slavery. It describes the desolation and pain of the individual Greek, surviving centuries of Ottoman rule. third movement, Klefturia, or insurgency. This is the only instrumental part in the symphony. The scherzo's action-oriented profile aptly matches the military theme of Greek guerrilla fighters. The movement is based on three folk songs: «Πικρή μωρέ ζωή που ζούμε οι μαύροι κλέφτες» and «Παιδιά μ, σα θέτε λεβεντιά και κλέφτες να γεννείτε». The melody «Κάτω στου βάλτου τα χωριά» occupies the traditional trio section, providing lyrical contrast to the first two themes. The finale, Revolution, Επανάστασης, is the most substantial movement of the work. The texts used are from Greek folk songs, Rigas Phareos Thurios hymn, the Hymn to Liberty by Dionysius Solomos, a psalm by David, and the Greek Orthodox Church hymn, Apolitikion, of the Resurrection. Astrinidis' setting of Thurios is, in my view, one of the most successful treatments of Rigas' poem. And his harmonization of Christos Anesti is exemplary in its respect for the melody's pure diatonic character. The movement ends in a triumphant tone with a full rendering of the Greek national anthem combined with elements from the Resurrection Apolitikion. Symphony 1821 by Nicolas Astrinidis is the most ambitious attempt to cast the Greek War of Independence in sound. Diving into collective memory, it uses the poetic and musical traces of modern Hellenism to build extensive symphonic narratives of wide recognition. It thus constitutes an artistic monument celebrating the resurrection of Ilias in the modern world, as well as providing a powerful cultural tool to defend and promote modern Greek history internationally.